Welcome to Inside Texas Football, powered by InsideTexas.com. I've got Drew with me. I've got Ian. Is that your name? Ian. I've got Ian with me. And then maybe may have some other people coming. That might be really fun. We really appreciate you being here and joining us on this fine Monday. Please like and subscribe. All of that good stuff actually helps the channel quite a bit. And for those of you that are watching over on Twitter, thank you so much. We would appreciate it if you gave whatever handle you're following a follow. Thank you. So Drew, how are you feeling? I don't know. You said in the text today that you've been pretty busy. So have you had the opportunity to understand that your dream of going back to the BCS is very unlikely to happen? We're going to continue with the playoff.
You know what though? That this could actually be better. It could actually.
Wait, hold on. You're legitimately okay with this? I thought you would just be up in arms.
Well, there was a time. Okay. Let's take you back to this time. There was a time where there was a regional pride that you had. You had the Pac-12 and wasn't even the Pac-12 then, but you had the West Coast teams and we had the Texas teams where it meant something to represent your region, your area, something like that. You had the Southeast Conference. You had different parts of the country where it was just they were conferences. They were conferences, and it meant something to represent your region and be great. It meant something to come out of that. That BCS era gave us that. At this point, I mean, we're pulling players from California, Arizona, Florida, Georgia. I mean, we're pulling guys from all over the place. This is the NFL. Like you're pulling players from all over the country now. So if you're not going to have the element of representing the state of Texas or this region and playing in the BCS and being one of the best teams from your region to play against the best teams from another, let's just do it the way we're doing it now. Let's expand it and make sure it's all, it's equitable and everybody's getting paid, and, let's go all in.
This is from our friend Alan here. This super conference was coming from miles away. If you couldn't smell it from a couple years ago, you were either in denial or your head was buried. Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time, basically since the mergers started happening with the Pac-12 expansion, and then having even A&M go to the SEC started this conversation about where we were actually headed. So yes, I agree. This has been coming down the pipe for a very long time. Ian, you are generally considered probably one of the most passionate people on staff. How are you handling this news?
Good.
Great.
There's a number of changes that college football needs to make. It's for the last 10 or 20 years, college football has gotten really, really predictable. Like I remember when people were arguing when NIL was legalized, and I remember there was one side of the argument that was like, this could turn into like a slush fund for people to pay players to play. And I was like, of course it's going to, and other people were like, no. And I was like, of course it's going to be that. Those things already exist. So of course they'll immediately transition into an above board. When you understand the underlying dynamics of what drives the game, which is mostly television money.
Yeah.
Then it's really easy just to see how things are going to proceed. And so most of the big changes over the last few years for me have been anticipated. And so they just make sense. And they're just kind of like watching the tide, it's hard to have a super passionate feeling one way or the other. It's like, yeah, the moon's over there now, so the water's going to be over here.
We would, for those of you that are joining us, certainly, like I said, on Twitter or here on YouTube, we'd love to hear your thoughts. So go ahead and throw those in the chat. The thing for me, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, James. The thing for me is not the expansion. It's not the fact that this is changing. It's just the upfront, overt, very clear message by the SEC and the Big Ten that is like, we're just going to do this and we might let you participate. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, James.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it used to be in the past, it felt like something you would talk about more behind the scenes. And now it's basically come out that they're like, we're going to need changes, or, yeah, like you said, we're starting our own thing. And people had like hypothesized about this when this initially started. And now it basically slowly led to this point where it is basically now auto bids. We're going to want a few SEC teams guaranteed to be in the whole thing. And why wouldn't they do it? I get it, but it kind of ruins the like mystical view of it as like a childlike nostalgia view of college football, where it is now fully just like highest bidder. We produce more eyes. We have more power than the NCAA itself, so we can do whatever we want.
See, that's what I'm missing. It's not the BCS era that I'm missing here, LC. It's the fact that when we played Ohio State back in 2005, 90% of their players were from Ohio. If not more.
Yeah.
They were all from Ohio. Everyone on our roster was from Texas. My entire recruiting class was from Texas. So when I think back on my experience, it wasn't just that, we all wanted to go to Texas. It meant something to choose Texas over A&M or Texas over, any of these other schools in the region. Ohio State, sure in their world, it meant the same. So when I think back on games like that, that's what's never coming back that I held on to. So, it is what it is. It's been long gone. But when I think about the BCS, when I think about what's never coming back, that's what we won't see again. Just that pride in the state of Texas, the pride in the Texas brand, it's interwoven into who you are as a kid growing up in Texas. Now it's literally a brand that anyone can have access to. You know what? Okay, that's fine. They all got it now.
Well, I wonder just to push back a little bit on that, because I think, first of all, I love the aspect of the regionalism that you like is actually on the personnel point of view. But to me, the fact that the brand now is a national brand, and they're taking kids from all over the country, doesn't that mean that much more to Texas kids? Because those opportunities are now a lot fewer, because now they're doing things on a national level. Doesn't that actually raise the level of desire and need, because it becomes even more exclusive because there's less opportunities for in-state kids?
It's exclusive at Texas, but I guess it'd be exclusive at Alabama or Georgia or whoever the highest bidder is too.
Precisely, yeah.
So it's not, we're special, but everyone else is, as long as the check is right. So
yeah, well, that's my point. But if you want to go to Texas, your opportunities are getting lower and lower. Is I think the challenge there.
We may get back to. I'm like Drew. For me, it's actually a little more fun when the teams and their strategies have to reflect the actual people of the region and the high school ball that takes place there and all that. I like that. I think that's more fun. The problem was that Southern ball was superior, and so the North has to import it to stand a chance. But we may get back to something like that, because I think teams are fighting in the NIL era. You need to have some kids on your roster. You need to have a critical mass of kids on your roster for whom the pride of the state matters, like at Texas. You need a certain number of kids for whom it matters if the Longhorns are good or bad. If everybody is all about me, then it's harder to maintain a standard, I think, culturally. Maybe Drew disagrees, but
well, I mean, go ahead, James.
I was just gonna say there are still those guys, like that's what makes a guy like a Michael Taff or Makuba coming back home to Austin, or Jade. Those guys actually seem to really care about the pride of Texas and UT. And those guys have pictures growing up going to DKR and stuff like that. So I do think that, if anything, it's what, like Drew said, it used to be everyone on his team. It's now those guys are more valuable, because I think the older Texas fans, the like homegrown Texas fans, love those kids so much more, 10x, than they used to, because now they're few and far between.
And I think, make no mistake, Sark is still recruiting guys who, like, it is important for him to have guys who want to be at Texas. I mean, the NIL is going to be whatever it's going to be. He still wants guys who want to be at Texas. They understand the big picture. They understand they can buy into really working their way into the program and being a part of the culture, because of the upside of not just what they'll make in a year or two, but, as they say, the 40-year decision. So Sark is still recruiting in that way. I know we're never going back to And you know, it is what it is. It is what it is. I
I think
think
there
that's the
may
main.
be.
I love where we're headed. Love where we're headed, but I think this is like the final straw of me letting go of where we were.
Well, but there might be the one, if we're going back to maybe this rare opportunity for me to agree with Ian, I do think that there's going to be one aspect of this that will be very regional, especially if you do go to one of those super conferences. And it's this. You don't even know, you don't need to get into the weeds on this, but if you look at, this is all the Division I football teams on a map. I mean, pretty much right now, you are looking at, if you were to take Texas West, there's a small portion of the amount of teams that are even available. So if you do go to a super conference, the likelihood of them coming back to a more regional schedule, to me, is much higher. I see us going back to a regional schedule, maybe even, a pod type system where we've got, certainly we're going to play A&M every year. We're going to play Oklahoma every year. You add Arkansas into that. That's a 4-team squad right there. So I actually think that there is a high opportunity for us to become more regional, but I do think that the personnel are going to be. I think it's just the way it is now. It's going to be national.
No, it definitely will. But I am excited. I think we should get some rivalries back. Especially if we're going to finally have a 9th game in the SEC. Hopefully we can have some rivalries we get to keep. I know Joe highlighted a lot of those things today, or maybe it was yesterday on Inside Texas. So. There's a lot to look forward to. The thing is, we finally have a structure, or potentially have a structure that could make sense. And there's just it's more objectivity on who gets to go and who doesn't at the end of the season. So kind of know as the season unfolds, you're going to have a shot one way or the other. But it allows you to get better or have injuries or have some of the, if you're going to have a long season, you need some forgiveness in the schedule. So
I want to stay on this because this is one of those things that I would really like to see James and Ian argue about. But first, let's hear from one of our sponsors.
This video is brought to you by Luxe Kitchen and Bath. Luxe has been offering high-end kitchen and bathroom remodels for 3 generations throughout the greater Austin area. With 5-star review after 5-star review on Google and Facebook, and an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, you can put your faith in Luxe Kitchen and Bath's award-winning designers and skilled craftspeople to bring to life that dream vision of your special home. But that's not all. Luxe's all-star team provides full remodels, large additions, and even commercial build-outs as well. So call Luxe Kitchen and Bath at 833-358-LUXE today. Or visit luxekitchenbath.com to discover where quality meets luxury and begin the process of transforming your home. Get a free quote today by calling 833-358-LUXE. That's LUXE. Or by visiting luxekitchenbath.com. Link in the description.
I want to talk a little bit about some of the proposed rules or elements of this expansion, but Chris has a question here that I think it's directed at our friend Drew. Chris is asking Drew, is Sark recruiting at the same or better pace than Mac? And the word pace there, I think, is kind of interesting because Mac was pretty much locked up by, January of each year. But what's your take on that, Drew?
No, as far as pace, but it's impossible to in this environment. You don't know what you're going to have on your roster. I mean, and so that's a portion of it. Even going, I mean, you have the recruiting schedule is out of whack. So you need to know what you're going to have on your roster to know what you're going to go after. But also now players are waiting. Your top players are waiting to the end of a recruiting cycle to really maximize their value, maximize the bidding war, if you will, and make some last minute decisions. So yeah, you're almost at your best if you hold off on some guys until late in the decision-making process, at least so you can make sure, A, you have the right relationship. They're still who you want to pursue. And B, you can give your final number at the final time to do so and not play all your cards earlier in the process.
With this proposed expansion of the playoffs, one of the issues is that the Big Ten and the SEC want some guaranteed spots. I've read upwards of 4 each league. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, guys, because this nullifies the championship game for sure. I mean, I don't know why we're doing that anymore. That just puts the kids at risk for injury. I know why. It's money, but that's that extra game I imagine that the coaches will have a say in that. Because if they're putting their kids at risk and they already know they're going to the playoffs, what are your thoughts, Drew?
The only reason to play that championship game is to have inventory to make money as a product. So having a replacement as a play-in, I mean, it's just still, you have an opportunity to make money as a product. And so campus presidents, I'm sure, will be happy to have another game on campus on those weekends if they earn the right to do so. They'll make money. They'll get exposure. So it'll still work because there'll still be some incentive for everybody, both from those who need a product to make money off of it, but also an incentive if you finish your conference at the top of the ranking. So it's gonna play itself out.
So you think we're going to go to 17, 18 games?
No, I don't think we need any more games necessarily.
Well, if you add more teams to the playoff, you could potentially add some more games.
Well, you add more buys, but you add less games if you're not playing if you're top two conference champions. So let's say you're number one and you're number two, and your conference does not have to play a play-in game. Those teams actually get a true bye because they won't have to play that play-in game, and they may get another bye going into the playoff. So I think it'll all play itself out, but there will be teams that have to play, if they can make it that far, maybe a play-in game, the first round of the playoffs, and then throughout, everything throughout just to try to get to a championship.
Could this league championship game be the play-in game? You're good. You got first place, second place, and then the league championship game decides.
No, once you expand it, you don't even need to play. The number one and number two in your league don't even need to play the play-in game at that point.
Right.
At least from what I've read, number 3 can play number 6 and number 4 can play number 5. And those two from each conference, they'll come for those final 2 spots to go into the playoff. But those are just the conversations that are having now. Either way, winning a conference championship won't be a thing outside of, hey, you have 9 regular season games in your conference. You won your conference based on your schedule. Now your reward is you get a bye week or 2, and you get to go into the playoff. Meanwhile, you still have some inventory. You still have a product for play-in games to get to the playoff, with the playoff being the ultimate goal.
What is the specific? Is this a 14-team format we're talking about? Or
it can be 14 or 16, but 14 is kind of where the thought is there.
Because you need with the advantage of the 14-team format is that 2 teams get buys in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
And then it doesn't even have to be explicit. It's just everybody knows that's the Big Ten and the SEC champion. Unless, the ACC champion or whatever, or Notre Dame just has this unbelievable season. But even then, right? Yeah. Okay. But what is the mechanism for determining who from the Big Ten and who from the SEC get the number 1 seed if you don't have a championship game?
I mean, maybe that's where they do pull in rankings. It's say the highest ranked SEC team or the highest ranked Big Ten team.
You could do regular season conference standings like college basketball does before they have their conference tournaments. I mean, because the way it's going, there really isn't much of a benefit to a conference championship game to the teams and the players other than money, obviously, right? But we even saw people talking about theorizing that there should be play-in games for conference championship games this year. So, I mean, it's just unfortunately kind of going to keep going down this rabbit hole. I mean, you saw when college basketball moved up to 68 teams in their tournament. It's just the more games, the more money, so they have no reason not to. They'll probably keep conference championship games. So the end result will probably be 17 games would be my guess total. Same as this year. We saw Texas played 16 games. Notre Dame played 16 games, but Ohio State played 16, but you could have potentially played 17. They'll probably just keep going. but I don't know whether that's great for the sport. But it seems like that's where it's headed, unfortunately.
Well, the Catholics are sitting pretty right now. Let's just be honest. I mean, you gotta be in the top 14, and you're pretty much in the playoffs if you are the University of Notre Dame.
Well, now they can get a bye.
Well, yeah, exactly. So this has been a really good turn of events for that particular independent school.
It's not even just that. It's that if schools are allowed to start using TV money, if they're required to share that revenue with their athletes at their school, Notre Dame has two pots to collect from. They have a deal with ESPN and through the ACC, and then they have their deal with NBC. So they're going to be raking in TV money. And where do you think Notre Dame is going to? Which athletes do you think Notre Dame is going to spend that money on?
It's probably lacrosse. Yeah,
probably lacrosse. Exactly. Notre Dame is in amazing shape.
They are, but I would say if the Big Ten and the SEC are going to be forgiven for some of the losses, more so than probably they have in recent years, especially if they're playing 9 conference games each, Notre Dame's schedule won't be as forgiving as those. So you may not drop, the 4th ranked or 5th ranked SEC team if they lose to the 3rd ranked SEC team because, they're all playing each other and beating up on each other. So I do think while they could sit pretty, Notre Dame has to make some decisions on if they want to try to adjust or beef up their schedule to make sure that any loss they do incur does not push them out of the opportunity of just being able to make up for it, or if they're just going to be dominant. But
they just lost to Northern Illinois and then they went to the championship.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
But I do think when you are, and that's just one loss, and I get what you're saying, but I think this year, for instance, if Florida has an opportunity to go to a conference championship or to go to the playoff, it's not even about the conference championship anymore because they finished the season strong. Or South Carolina, like when you look at those teams who finished the season stronger, they're being held up against a Notre Dame in a way. Now, I'm not going to say, we both know nobody wants to leave Notre Dame out, but I do think teams that are playing 9 conference games against each other and facing each other later in the season won't be as penalized as maybe we've been used to doing. Just if we do make these changes where we're actually going to respect these losses and stop dropping teams 12 spots because they lost to a team higher than them.
Yeah. I mean, to harp back on the point in basketball right now, as we see, I know many people on the page might not know about basketball, but SEC is dominant in basketball this year. They're actually a basketball conference now, but they've got three SEC teams on the one line, right? And they beat each other, and it doesn't matter what their records are. They're keeping the SEC, I think, had 5 out of 6 teams in the NCAA's initial top 2 seed lines. And the way football is going, they're playing 9 conference games. You might see a 10-2 team being, the committee's top 5, a 10-3 team maybe in the SEC because they will value these games that they're playing against tougher competition now. With playing more games in the conference, Big Ten, SEC will probably get the nod over, let's say, Notre Dame if they have less losses, or going to ACC. And as we already see, but it'll just happen on a bigger scale now with more teams, would be my guess.
Ian, do you see Texas has been very good of scheduling a very competitive, or at least a very notable brand within the first 2 or 3 games of the season.
Yeah.
And for the foreseeable future, at least what we know of our schedule, that's still the case. Do you see other teams adopting that strategy once they go to the 9-game schedule and they know that 4 of their teams are essentially guaranteed to get into the playoffs?
Yeah, I think that. So, if, for instance, if you read the Ross Dellinger bit today,
I'm waiting for the audiobook, but yeah.
That was, that's this, I think.
That's this. Okay.
He laid out some things that Inside Texas had already hinted at or reported on earlier. But a lot of his was colored from the perspective of the SEC and the Big Ten are running things now. And the SEC will maybe now consider this or that, like scheduling more games like Texas does, where you get a marquee Big Ten or maybe ACC, but probably Big Ten non-conference game on your schedule. It's all fake. The SEC and the Big Ten are not calling the shots per se. The TV executives are. And when they're like, SEC, you're going to start playing 9 conference games, and you're going to play a more competitive non-conference schedule. The SEC is agreeing to that on the condition of, okay, but you got to give us guaranteed playoff spots. That's what's going on. And most of the leverage is on the part of the TV people because they control the money. And the Big Ten and the SEC have power in this insofar as they have the largest TV fan bases. So I think what's going on here is TV is driving this to get a lot less Alabama versus Bethune-Cookman and a lot more Alabama versus like Penn State or whatever, and actually make the big brands play each other on a regular basis so that we can all watch at home and be happy. And the schools are just negotiating what little leverage they have to guarantee things like, okay, well, y'all can't screw us in the playoffs again like you did this year. Right.
Okay. Let me hear from our sponsor real quick, and then let's throw those questions you've got in the chat. We'll get to those.
I'm just going to say, guys, you probably need a fiduciary financial advisor, and I've got the guy for you. His name is David McClellan with Forum Financial. He works broadly and deeply with his clients as a financial life coach, and he should know something about coaching because he won several national championships as a swimmer for the University of Texas. He specializes in financial planning and has contributed numerous articles to Kipling on the topic of retirement tax bombs. So contact David today to be your fiduciary financial planner and schedule a 1-hour consultation to assess your financial situations. The free consultation is available, so just give him a call. The number is 312-933-8823. That's 312-933-8823. His email is also in the description below.
Can I throw in a quick conspiracy theory on this topic?
I hope that it's not quick. You've 3 minutes.
3 minutes. I don't have 3 minutes. I think I have a suspicion that they left out a 4th SEC team in the playoffs this year to nudge the SEC into accepting the 9-game conference schedule, and you guys need to be more like Texas and play some real teams in the non-conference. If you want to be let in, then that's what you need to agree to.
Okay. Walk me through the machinations of this and how. I mean, were there drop zones? Did they leave manila envelopes in certain places? How did they pull this off?
Well, just whenever they meet for the negotiations, the big mouse comes in and is like, yeah, you guys want more playoff spots, but you don't play 9 games. And as you've seen, if you don't play 9 conference games, it's hard to justify putting you in. So the ball's in your court.
James, you're a regular on 4chan. What is your thought on Ian's reply here?
Yeah, I think he's like Charlie Day, and It's Always Sunny when he's pointing at the whiteboard, that meme with all the dots connected.
Oh, I like that you're talking to Ian in memes. That's a language he understands.
I'm surprised he hasn't made a format of that yet in Texas football variety of the conspiracy meme, but I don't think so. I think they got left out because Alabama lost to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma.
Whoa. We're not saying names here, James. We said
team. We're not saying names. Have the white files not been released yet on this one? But yeah, I mean, I think that's why they got left out. Maybe there's a little bit of that, but I don't think that even if Alabama had scheduled another non-conference game, like say they did in 22 and 23 playing UT when that was still a non-conference game, that if they had done that this year, they would have been rewarded if they say had lost that game still, or if Ole Miss had played, because we know Ole Miss has a notoriously just cakewalk of a non-conference schedule. But I don't think that that was necessarily the driving force. I think it was probably more so TV and the conferences themselves just wanting to do that for, obviously just money reasons. You get now more bigger conference games and they will be incentivized to do non-conference games because as we get more to like an NFL schedule, or NFL type of format where it will not matter. We'll probably see an 8-4 team make the playoff.
Isn't it auspicious, though, that the same announcement that the SEC is going to go to 9 games also comes with guaranteed playoff spots?
This was talked about even last spring or last offseason. I just remember when they were having these conversations last year that it was going to continue to expand. This is the first time I've heard at least this proposed, but I think with the meetings coming up, this has more legs, especially as we get closer to 2026, because it won't change this year. It'll change the following year in 2026, and it'll be in place apparently from 2026 to 2031. So, this isn't a new concept. I just know it wasn't going to be able to take action on it until 2026. So maybe that's why this story's coming out. But I do know it needs to get legs, or they need to solidify it. And one thing that I know Alan mentioned is the idea is that, yes, there will be another conference game, 9 conference games, but also that the Big Ten and SEC will have a game, just intra-conference game, 1 per year per schedule as well. So that's something that's being proposed. That's something Texas is already doing. We open next season with Ohio State. So yeah, we've been doing that. We'll see how the rest of the SEC responds to it.
I do think that one of the knock-on effects, and this is what Eric and I were talking about this last Saturday, is having these 9 games. Hopefully, will also take out that very traditional SEC late October bye, where they usually play a Polytechnical Institute right before their big rivalry game. I think that's probably going to go by the wayside for them. The scheduling for the SEC has been notorious for that, and I don't think that that's going to be able to continue. So, I mean, we'll see. This is all, as Drew pointed out, all still in motion. I think to me, the big, and I do agree with Ian, this is obviously a TV move, but when you are a league that has 4 guaranteed spots into the playoff, you are telling those other leagues very much where they stand in the hierarchy. And I wonder what that does to the landscape of recruiting. I wonder what that does to the landscape of transfers. I mean, do you start using Oklahoma State as a feeder school, for example? Because I mean, honestly, if you're a dominant program that is getting into the playoff pretty consistently, why wouldn't you pick and choose from some of those other leagues? You don't seem convinced of that, Drew.
Oh, no, I'm thinking of another angle altogether.
Oh, let's do it. Let's hear it.
It's not just the recruiting. I think even right now, if for instance, you're Iowa State and you have an NIL fund, right? A lot of these funds, these NIL collectives, where's the return on your investment, right? If you're putting money into a program that is not going to have guaranteed spots or is going to have limited spots, are you really putting all your money into Iowa State football or Kansas football or Texas Tech football with the hope that they win their Big 12 championship and get their 1 spot or 2 spots? Is that what all of your money, all the money you're just throwing at a program without any return on your investment? It does make me wonder what those programs are going to come to, because while there should be some financial structure for the players in those conferences to get paid by the school directly. So there will be something there. We all know that extra oomph, that extra seasoning, that extra you put on top of those, the collective money or whatever that money may be that comes in from a conference. That comes from pockets of people who are very passionate about winning championships and passionate about the brand and passionate about just contributing to the team and the history and the story of the program. That's going to look different if you're not in the SEC or Big Ten. So
they can get private capital and then live with the fallout of that if that also doesn't produce ROI.
Well, it does. Drew's point also brings up is if you're sitting there as the as the ACC, the Big 12, you are far more motivated to say, all right, let's just have a giant super league with everybody all in the same thing, have a commissioner. So that's another way that the SEC and the Big Ten could be forcing their hand, is just being like, look, you want in on this? Or I mean, not that after the SEC and the Big Ten get this, I don't know why they would be motivated to go to a super league, but I don't know.
Because if you have a little, why not have more? What's one yacht if you can't have three? That's what, that's what these guys think.
Control.
Why would
So
they
much
not
more
have
control.
just total Big Ten versus SEC? I think it's just going to keep getting more and more extreme. And before we probably will see like a mini AFC and MC.
It could do. All right, guys. Listen, I really appreciate this. You stepping in on a Monday to talk about this stuff that may or may not come to play for a couple years. Do you have something you'd like to add there, Ian? I'm not going to cut you off. If you leaned in like you had something there. If you don't, it's fine. No, I'm not. Like I said, I just thought
I think it's funny that you could map the Big Ten and the SEC schools and their states that they represent, and it compares very similarly to maps you could find of the state of America in 1860, which is just a whole other thing. But the regional differences.
James, I'm gonna need you to pay attention to what happened in 1860. James, maybe just Google that.
Is he talking about the Civil War?
Yes. The regional differences map very, very closely to the Civil War, and I just think that that's kind of funny.
This is all a part of the agenda.
Well, I think it just demonstrates that North and South cultures are still different and keep to themselves in many ways.
See, I thought Ian was over there thinking about the future of his Big 12, who he loved so dearly for so long.
They didn't love me back. I don't care about them anymore.
That was not reciprocal. That's very much true. All right, guys. Well, on that bombshell.